Kills landfill near Manhattan. Here, garbage covers an area about the size of 2,000 football fields. Layers of trash are buried on top of each other. Each layer is covered with dirt. Without oxygen, light, and moisture, the ingredients needed for quick decomposition, even biodegradable things decay very slowly. New York City households send nearly 17,000 tons of garbage to the pile 6 days a week. Already, this landfill is 25 times greater in volume than the Great Pyramid in Egypt. It's one of the largest human-made monuments in the world. From coast to coast, thousands of communities have their own garbage, their own landfills, their own monuments to human waste. Many of these landfills will close in the next 10 years, and it's becoming more difficult to open new ones. The situation is critical. What can we do to help? Most of our garbage is the result of a simple three-step process. First, we make something: a can, a bottle, a newspaper. Then we use it. Take a drink, read a headline. Then we throw it away. That's all it takes to create a monument like the Fresh Kills landfill. Let's take a closer look at the process. We start with raw materials. With the input of energy, we make a product. Next, we use the product. Finally, we dispose of it, and it ends up in a landfill or an incinerator. Use is the engine that drives this process. When we demand more products, we use more energy and more raw materials, and we create more garbage. So what's wrong with that? To find out, let's follow the process of making an aluminum can. First of all, it's very expensive to mine and transport the raw materials needed to make aluminum. There's an environmental cost as well. Refining the raw materials requires a great deal of energy. The molten aluminum must be cooled, formed into sheets, and rolled. Each step involves a substantial use of energy. Even more energy is needed to shape the aluminum into a can, fill it, and ship it. After using all these resources and energy, the can is used once and thrown away. From raw materials to landfill in a few simple steps. What's wrong with this process? It uses a lot of material. It uses a lot of energy, and it creates pollution. It also creates a lot of waste. How can we deal with these problems? By improving the process, by shrinking the raw materials, energy, pollution, and waste. Doing so requires changes in every step of the process. And it requires something else, another step called recycling. That's where we take our waste and turn it into something useful. But before we consider recycling, Let's look at 3 ways of improving the steps we've already seen. First of all, manufacturers can improve the production process. For example, aluminum can companies have designed new cans that use 1/3 less aluminum. This saves thousands of tons of raw material each year. Changes like this help, but they're not enough to solve our problem. A second way to improve the process is by reducing consumer use. People can buy reusable items, or they can simply use less. But reducing use can be difficult. Our population is increasing. Every year, more and more people use cans and bottles and paper. People are changing their buying habits, but we'll always need some aluminum cans. So while trying to limit use helps, it's not a complete solution to our problem. A third way to improve the process is to alter how we dispose of used materials. They don't all have to go to landfills. For example, some communities are producing energy from their waste. At the Babylon Resource Recovery Facility near New York City, hundreds of tons of refuse are burned every day, reducing the volume of trash by up to 90%. Incineration does create some air pollution and ash, but it means far less waste to be disposed of in a landfill. And there's another benefit, a reduction in energy costs. Here's why. This plant uses heat from incineration to generate electrical power, enough electricity to supply 1/3 of the energy used by the surrounding community. Incineration, reduced use, and improved manufacturing all help. But it's through recycling that everyone can help solve our waste problem. Recycling short-circuits the waste stream. When used materials are returned to the beginning of the process, the result can be a significant reduction in raw materials, energy, pollution, and garbage. Recycling does take time and effort. Plastic, metal, glass, paper, motor oil, each substance needs to be handled in a different way. Because of this, all recycling starts with separation. That's what we do in our homes when we sort recyclables into different bins. Some communities have plants that separate mixed recyclables by the ton. This plant processes up to 400 tons of material a day. Material that won't end up in a landfill. First, the mixed recyclables are loaded onto a conveyor belt that carries them into the plant. The belt travels past an electromagnet, which attracts materials that contain steel and iron. These things are pulled aside and shipped to steel mills and other plants. Next, the belt travels through a rolling curtain of metal chains. Heavy objects, like glass bottles, pass through the chains. On the other side, workers separate the glass by color, usually brown, green, and clear glass. Meanwhile, lighter objects, aluminum cans and plastic bottles, are deflected by the chain curtain, and they roll off to the side. Next, aluminum is separated from plastic. The materials pass over an electric current. The current creates a magnetic field that shoots the aluminum cans into a hopper. The plastic continues to move on to people who sort it. Whether recyclables are separated by machinery in a plant or by people in their homes, they must be carefully sorted before recycling can continue. At this point, recycling takes several different paths, depending on the material. Nearly 2 out of every 3 aluminum cans are recycled. First, the cans are compressed. Then they're loaded into a shredder, which breaks them into pellets about the size of popcorn. Pellets are melted and formed into ingots of aluminum. Finally, the ingots are squeezed into sheets, rolled into coils, ready to be manufactured into new aluminum cans. Recycling aluminum saves 95% of the energy of manufacturing from raw materials. Each recycled can saves enough energy to run a typical color television for about 3 hours. The process is so efficient that from the time you toss a can into a recycling bin, its aluminum may be on the shelf and back to work in as little as 6 weeks. That metal can travel around and around, over and over again, saving energy and resources on every trip. Like aluminum, plastic is made from a limited resource, petroleum. We can conserve petroleum by recycling plastic products. But there are many different kinds of plastic. Many plastic products are made from a variety of resins, which must be separated to be recycled. These bottles have heavy plastic at the bottom, transparent plastic in the center, and hard plastic in the cap. That means after they're ground up, the different kinds of plastic must be separated from each other. This is done in a water bath. The lighter pieces float, while the heavier pieces sink. The separated plastic is tested for contamination. After this, the pieces can be manufactured into new plastic. While recycling plastic conserves petroleum, recycling paper conserves our forest resources, forests that help maintain the atmosphere and give wildlife a place to live. So rather than throwing paper in a landfill, manufacturers are recycling paper. Thousands of tons of paper are mixed with water to make a slurry. Then it's process to get the ink out. Next, the slurry is spread onto a rolling screen. It's pressed and dried. Finally, it's wound up onto large rolls. Then it's cut and shipped. There are thousands of uses for recycled paper, all of which help us conserve our natural resources. We've already made a lot of progress in recycling, but there's still room for improvement. First of all, we're still improving the techniques for recycling some materials. For example, there are many different kinds of plastic. It's expensive to separate them. Here at the Center for Plastics Recycling Research at Rutgers University, scientists are developing ways to safely and quickly separate plastic bottles. This machine uses X-rays and photocells to identify a bottle's makeup. Then it uses air jets to deposit it into the proper bin. Second, we're working on better ways to collect recyclables. In some communities, people take their recyclables to a collection center. Recycling has already become a part of daily life for many people. But to get more people involved, we have to make recycling more convenient. One solution is to pick up recyclables right from people's homes. Citizens still have to separate their recyclables from trash, but they don't have to drive to a center. Instead, special trucks come by as part of the regular garbage pickup and take recyclables away. In communities that offer this service, many more people are likely to participate. Another solution comes from industry. Some gas companies encourage consumers to recycle used motor oil instead of throwing it away. When industry, local government, and citizens work together, recycling can approach its full potential. And third, we're evaluating all the costs involved with managing our waste. It does take money to build facilities that sort recyclables, or to pick them up from people's homes. But it can cost even more to open and operate new landfills. And no one wants a landfill in their neighborhood. Where does the money to buy landfill space come from? From higher taxes and garbage collection fees. It also costs money to develop a landfill, buy equipment, and hire a staff to properly maintain the landfill. And when the landfill can't hold anymore, it costs even more to safely close it up and monitor it, so that the waste inside doesn't contaminate nearby water supplies. In the long run, it's better to invest in recycling. There are a lot of ways to use our recyclable materials. Take yard waste, for example. It makes up nearly 20% of our waste. It's such a big part of our garbage that many communities recycle it on a large scale. Here, workers are turning and sifting fresh compost. It came from grass clippings and leaves that were collected from people's yards. You can do the same thing in your backyard. There's a kind of lawnmower called a mulching mower. Instead of catching the grass in a bag, it chops the clippings into tiny bits. As they decompose, the clippings naturally fertilize the lawn. A backyard compost heap is a good place to put chopped up leaves and branches as well as garden waste. Soon the waste decomposes. This compost, when it is mixed with soil, creates a garden that drains well and is rich in nutrients. Meanwhile, industry is finding more ways to use recycled materials. Used newsprint is recycled into the ceiling tiles and insulation that are used in building houses, and even into kitty litter. Scrap aluminum can be recycled into metal furniture, door closures, and parts for automobiles. Recycled steel can be found in everything from buildings and bridges to toys and toasters. More than 25% of the steel in a car has been recycled. And many things are made from recycled plastic, like carpeting, yo-yos, lunch trays, desk accessories, doormats, road barricades, paintbrushes, storage containers, even flower pots. Despite these advances, we're still recycling less than 15% of our waste, even though much more could be recovered. What can we do to help? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. We can reduce our waste and our consumption of resources by using both sides of a sheet of paper, by choosing packages that don't waste paper or cardboard, and by buying things in bulk so that we don't use as many small containers. We can reuse things like putting leftovers in empty containers, lining animal cages with newspaper, and shopping with reusable bags. And with the waste that we must generate, we can practice recycling. We can't keep throwing it all away. But we can all make some simple changes that will make a monumental difference for the future.